This is Mr. Warden. This is the Algebra Do Now 30.1 Do Now key. So we're going to do a key, and that's week 30, day number 1. And you'll notice here, quadratic 7a is a theme for today. So let's take a look at these. So we got this quadratic trinomial, and if we multiplied 2 from this 2n squared by 2 at the end, we call that the constant term, you get 4. What are factors of 4 that would add up to the 5 from 5n? Well, 4 equals, of course, 4 times 1, and 5 equals 4 plus 1. So that actually would allow us to factor this, and in the next question, we do that. So 4 plus 1 and 4 times 1. So 4 times 1 gets us 4, and 4 plus 5. Okay, let's take a look at this next one. So what I can do is I can take that 4 and that 1, and I can actually split the 5 into a 4n and a 1n. And that's going to allow me to use something called factoring by grouping in order to factor this overall quadratic. So I've taken it and broken it into 4 terms. The middle term I split into a 4n and a 1n. And now I've grouped the 2 sets of terms. So I'm going to look for the greatest common factor I can pull out of each. So here I have 2n squared plus 4n. And then I've got plus 1n plus 2. Now over here, this is the easy one. I can't get anything but a 1 out of here. So divide that by 1, it's just the same thing. Divide 2 by 1, it's just that. So I'm just going to leave that alone. Can't do any more than that. However, over here, I can get a 2 out of 2n squared and a 2 out of 4n. So I'll take a 2 out. So let's get rid of that now. But then I've got an n squared and an n, so I can take an n out as well. So that becomes just n instead of n squared. And n divided by n is, oh, hang on. I made a mistake because that was a 2n. So I'm taking, let me go back for a second so I don't lose you all on this. So this was 2n squared. And this was 4. So the first thing I did was take a 2 out here. That made this a 2, and this 4 became a 2. Now I can pull an n out of both of those, and the n squared will just become n, and the 2n will just become 2. And now I've got an n plus 2 and an n plus 2 here. And that actually allows me to take the next step, which is, and all I asked you to do, of course, is to factor out the greatest common factor possible. I'm going to show you what this allows us to do. This allows us to factor this overall quadratic. So since n plus 2 is shared as a factor by both of these, we can use the distributive property, and we can just say n plus 2 here, and that is going to be times this 2n plus this 1. So 2n plus 1, and we have factored that overall quadratic. Now, it wasn't required for you to do that, but I wanted you to see that that is where that goes. Now let's take a look at this one. So we've got the 3 in front of 3n squared, and the 4, so this 3 and this 4. We're going to multiply them together. And here I'll do a little x thingy so you can see what I mean. So I'm doing 3 times 4, and that's going to get me 12. And so I want to get 2 factors of 12 that add up to negative 8. Okay, so what are 2 factors of 12 that add up to negative 8? Well, negative 2 and negative 6 will do the job. 2 and 6 add up to 8. I'm going to need negative numbers, so let's do that. Negative 2 and negative 6. Or I could say negative 6 and negative 2. Either one works. So the 2 factors that work are negative 2 and negative 6. Now, the next thing, I took advantage of that, and I took the negative 8 in, and I split it up into a negative 6 in and a negative 2 in. This is the same thing as what I had up there. And I'm going to group the pairs here and here. So notice that this minus got kept inside the parentheses, so that became a plus. And now our job is to factor out the greatest common factor from each of these little binomials here. So I've got 3n squared minus 6n, and then that's plus negative 2n plus 4. And I need to factor out the greatest common factor. Well, what's the greatest common factor here? Well, the greatest common factor here is, well, we can definitely get a 3. So let's pull out the 3. Let's go just with the numbers first. The minus 6 becomes a negative 2. And I can also factor out an n. So the n squared just becomes n, and the n here becomes a 1. So I'm just left with 3n times n minus 2. Then over here, the largest thing I've got in common is a 2 or a negative 2. I'm going to go with the negative 2. I get the negative 2 out of there. That just becomes n. And 4 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 2. And look, I've got the same factor here and here. That means I could use the distributive property once again to factor this whole thing. So n minus 2 times 3n, and that's a plus minus 2, so that's a minus 2 as well. And I have factored this quadratic. So I hope that makes that clear. Please let me know what you'll be working on today, and let me know what you did for homework over the last week, and which things you're going to take care of for homework this week, if there are any things. All right, I hope that was helpful.